Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rochelle Rosario, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about managing mental health and suicidal thoughts. As always, I'm talking purely from my own experiences. What I believe in you might not agree with, and what works for me might not work for someone else. I'm going to be including things that I forgot to mention in previous vlogs, along with some new tools that I've learned more recently. And when I say managing mental health, I'm talking about my post-traumatic stress, which includes depression, anxiety, insomnia, and suicidal thoughts. It's hard because I didn't want this condition. It stems from acts of violence from my past. And, I don't want these symptoms. If I could magic it away, I would. And yeah, as much as I've realized I can't control my symptoms and my thoughts, I feel like to a certain extent I can manage how I respond to them. And I'm learning as best I can how I can adapt my life to living with these symptoms. I don't believe my traumas and my past define me as a person, but I do believe they are a part of me. And some days it's more noticeable than others. And regarding suicidal thoughts, where there's been an increase of suicide since lockdown, this is definitely a subject that I want to talk about in more depth. I feel like it can be quite a taboo subject, but a really important one. And there's lots of little things that I've learned over the past couple of years that have saved me on acting on those thoughts. Now with this video, I just want to bring awareness, hopefully help end the stigma and help others feel less alone. So please feel free to share with anyone you think might resonate. So let's begin. Right, antidepressants. I know there can be a lot of judgment when it comes to antidepressants. I was very hesitant myself. I was first prescribed with citalopram in 2019. And I got it. I went to the doctors. They gave it to me straight away. I didn't ask any questions. I was like, well, whatever will help me feel better. And then I went home and found out that it can take up to 2 weeks or even up to 6 weeks for them to truly work. And I was in such a bad way. I was like, oh my God, 2 weeks. I need something now. And I didn't end up taking them. Fast forward towards the end of that year, I hit a really rough patch again. And this time I just Googled medication for PTSD, and one came up called sertraline, and went doctors, hi, can I have sertraline? They gave it to me straight away. Didn't look into the side effects or anything like that. And I started taking them, and I had really bad side effects. I was having really bad suicidal thoughts already. And as soon as I started taking the sertraline, they increased so much. And I have nightmares and bad dreams anyway, but on sertraline, my nightmares became even more violent, really gory. And I only lasted 6 days on them in total. But I do know a couple people that have taken antidepressants, haven't suffered any side effects, and it's worked really well for them. But one thing I would say is to research them properly and speak to your doctors more about them, because that's what I didn't do. I kind of thought it was something that would ease you for a couple months. Apparently it can take, like I said earlier, 2 to 6 weeks for them to truly kick in. Then you've got to work out your dosage, if you need to go higher or lower, and then you can't just stop taking them. You have to get weaned off them. So instead of that path, I chose to take vitamins. I started taking omega-3, magnesium, iron, vitamin B, vitamin D. They're all related to mental health somehow, or energy levels, or to help you with better sleep and this, that and the other. And I preferred going down that route because it wasn't mind altering, and I could stop them at any time if I please. I know, not everyone will feel a difference, but they did work for me during that time. Not loads different, but definitely helped. One of the side effects with sertraline as well was my hands were shaking, my jaw was shaking, my jaw would be gurning. And like, thankfully, I told my manager I started taking this new medication because it looked like I've just come in from a night out. So that was another side effect I wanted to mention. The thing that I struggle most with is insomnia and sleep deprivation. So I do take sleeping pills, the ones that you can just buy over the counter in Boots, like Sominex or Sleep Easy. I know it's not great, and I know it's not a long-term solution, but having a better sleep definitely helps me to manage my mental health and my suicidal thoughts. I've tried lavender oil, I've tried pillow spray, CBD oil, rescue remedy, Vedic meditation, which is similar to transcendental meditation. I've tried amethyst crystals. I've even tried a lavender infused face cream with amethyst crystals infused in it as well, something like that. And I didn't feel any difference. Of course, we're all individual, but I'm open to try new things, but I do try and practice acceptance for now, because it can be disheartening when you're constantly trying new things but not seeing any improvements. Now, in August, I had a bad experience which really triggered my PTSD. I won't go into it much now, but my mental health hasn't been the same since. And in hindsight, looking back, it taught me how important it is to honor your feelings and like listen to your body after a setback. Brene Brown says, adversity is helpful to build courage and stamina, but we don't need trauma. Trauma doesn't build tough people. Trauma sets people back. So for example, after that setback in August, I had a night out planned with my friends in London. And at the time I said, you know, I'm really ill, and I postponed it for a month. But looking back, I should have just postponed it until I felt better. I don't know why I decided a month would be good. I think in my head I was thinking, oh, it will be give me something to look forward to. Because yeah, rest and self-care is so important after reactivated trauma. And on the night, I looked okay, I looked ready, you know, makeup on, lashes on, but I wasn't mentally ready at all. That night I ended up in tears, and looking back, I should have just embraced the stages and not forced myself to get up and go. And the same with like going back to work. People ask me, when am I teaching classes again? And now I just say, when I'm ready. Like, my energy levels are too up and down, and I don't want to commit to anything and put pressure on myself. And I've had to adapt my life and routine a lot since PTSD. Like, I used to meditate and practice yoga all the time and do some form of exercise every day. And, you know, I know it's good for you, but nowadays I have to do it when I feel like it. Like, I've had chronic insomnia for over 2 years. I don't have the energy for like things like that anymore. Like, I used to be able to go for a run, but now I don't have the energy for that, so I'll go for a long walk instead. But what I don't like is how people's attitudes can be like, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I'm sure I've spoken like that before, you know, before I had PTSD. And now I'm like, listen, do whatever works for you. Listen to your body. And if I'm tired and I want to rest all day, I will. It's all part of my recovery, and I'm just trying to focus on being present and celebrating the small wins rather than having expectations. You know, tomorrow isn't promised. There's always going to be bumps in the road. Like, that's life. So I'm just learning to roll with it and take it one day at a time. I still have goals in life, but now if they don't work out, I accept it, and I just remind myself what is meant for you won't pass you by. There's a quote that I love which says, how to win at life. Step 1, let people do what they need to do to make them happy. Mind your own business and do what you need to do to make you happy. The end. Now, a big part of managing my mental health is therapy. So, you know, speaking to a professional, listening to their advice and guidance. I do talking therapy and EMDR therapy. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing, but in my first vlog, part 1, I talk about it in more detail there. But I just wanted to give a heads up as well, like when it comes to therapists, it can take a while for you to connect with someone. I worked out that within the space of 14 months, I met 7 different therapists. And a lot of the time when I first meet them, I'm just trying to suss them out. Because, you know, if we don't have the same views, it's not going to work. And I don't want to waste my time and money. For example, I met a therapist and he was suggesting that I forgive my perpetrators. And I was like, yeah, see you later. You know, out of the 7, 2 of them I truly connected with and felt improvement after. So I kind of look at it like looking for a personal trainer. You know, if I meet a PT and I connect with them and I feel an improvement after our sessions, then that's great. But if I don't, I will continue to look until I meet the right one. Another quote I like: "We can't heal what we don't feel." And I think that's so true, because me, when I talk to a therapist or talk to loved ones, even like helplines, I usually feel better after, because it's so good to get it off my chest. Rather than suppressing my feelings and emotions, I feel like the more that I suppress and hold it in, eventually it catches up with me, and that's when I can shatter and break down. And helplines, like, use them. After my experience in August, I felt like a burden calling my friends, so I'd call helplines instead. And they would even help with things like, for example, last year I was at my doctor's and I was due for a smear test, and it just gave me such bad anxiety. I left the doctor's and I broke down crying, and I called a helpline to talk to them because I was so anxious, and they were really sweet, really understanding, and they gave me advice like, instead of making an appointment for the smear test, why don't you make an appointment to meet the nurse, see the room, get familiar with the tools and the speculum and things like that. And if you don't feel comfortable telling them about your past, write it on a piece of paper and then pass it, you know, to the receptionist or the doctors. And I'd done that, and it was so helpful. And on the day of the test, they actually provided me a chaperone to hold my hands, which was really helpful as well. And I wouldn't have known to do any, or thought to do any of this unless I called that helpline. So I really recommend them. And yeah, when I come across people who love to give their opinions, it can be anything as little as, like, you know, stop watching reality TV, it's mind numbing, go and do some yoga. Even like their opinions when it comes to finances and stuff, it used to get my back up a lot. And then I have to remind myself, Rochelle, who are these people? Are they in your circle of close friends that, you know, understand you and truly empathize with your mental health? No? Then let's not give a fuck, because it's not worth your time or energy. And I learned that from a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Highly recommend that as well. There's a quote that says, "If it makes you happy and gives you peace and gives you purpose, it doesn't have to make sense to other people." And also I think of, don't take criticism from people who you wouldn't go to for advice. You know, half these people dishing out advice haven't experienced my PTSD or acts of violence. And part of my post-traumatic stress is depression and anxiety, so I don't need other people adding to it as well. So when I hear negative comments, I think, do you know what? It says a lot more about them and their mindset than it does about me. I've got this friend, Lucy, code name. I was really close with her, but the way that she would talk to me, I'm sure it was unintentional, but she would say, "Oh, I really wish you could go back to how you were. I met you at your most inspiring time." And I just thought, what? And I thought, actually, now is my most inspiring time. The fact that I'm still here and I'm still fighting. And then she'd go on to give me advice about dating, saying, you know, avoid men with any mental health issues. You know, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Oh yeah, she'd say, you know, "I don't know how you do it, resting all the time. You used to be on the go 24/7 and now you're living such a mundane life." And I'm thinking, well, that's your perception. You think mundane, I think peaceful. Like I said, I've had insomnia for over 2 years. Being on the go 24/7 doesn't appeal to me anymore. So I'm enjoying my mundane life, thank you very much. And a lot of people don't realise that hearing this shit can make you backtrack and can turn my focus on the negatives. And if you're surrounding yourself with people who are focused on how you're not well, you're not going to feel well.
And what I know is that you cannot continue to move forward in your life to the level that you need to be if you're surrounded by energy that brings you down, that sucks the life force from you. So not only are you responsible for the energy that you bring, is what I learned, you're also responsible for the energy that you surround yourself with.
Eventually, I switched on Lucy, kept my distance, and you know what? It's done me the world of goods. And I just wanted to share that to say it's okay to set boundaries, and, you know, it's okay to distance yourself from loved ones. I like to keep my circle small and, you know, love being in my own little bubble. And just because I'm distancing myself from friends, it doesn't mean that I think that they're a bad person or anything. I just don't have the headspace for it, you know. And I can imagine people thinking, oh, like she's isolated herself or whatever, but I've chosen to do that. I can't handle, well, my brain can't handle everyone's opinions, advice and small talk. So there's only a few people that I can truly feel myself around, and I'm sure with time and with healing that will change, but for now I just like to stick to those few. Oh yeah, and I always hear people say like, oh, peace and happiness, it comes from within, but only to a certain extent. I truly believe like your surroundings and in your environment makes a huge impact on your well-being, and is so important too. As much as I switched on Lucy, I was really upset at the time, and I did open up to a friend, and he sent me this message. Mate, you are such an inspiration still. The shit you have experienced would have ended some people, but you have come out stronger. May not always feel that way to you, but I see such a strong woman when I look at you. I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way, but I think you have actually become a better person because of the shit you've been through. People wanting the old you back miss out on the strength you have built by dealing with this. I personally love the new Rochelle, but maybe that's because she's real, honest, and when life is throwing shit on top of her, she stands up, picks it up, and says fuck off. It might not be an instant stand up, but it is a stand up rather than a lying down and taking it. And that was so sweet, and it just shows the significant difference between sympathy and empathy. So empathy, like the ability for you to step into the other person's shoes, with the intention to understand their feelings and perspectives, and to use that understanding to guide your actions and your words towards them. And if you're no longer aligning with someone, it's okay to take a step back. It doesn't mean a permanent step back. So any bit of time and energy now, I want to spend it on my supportive and understanding friends, and because I don't get any pressure from them either. I remember one time I was sitting on the sofa with my friends chatting away, and then I fell asleep mid-conversation, and bless her, there was no judgment from her. She didn't take it personally. Me and my mum, we message every day, and sometimes I'm really tired and I'm really down, and I'll be reading a message and we have something simple about a garden, but I just can't process it. So I just send a quick message, night, I'll reply when I'm feeling better, I just need to rest. And she just leaves me be, doesn't take it personally. And just because I practice acceptance with my mental health and I'm half used to my PTSD and insomnia, it doesn't mean it hurts any less. The only reason why I'm strong is because I haven't given up. You know, my past really hurt me, it broke me, and still impacts me to this day. I'm strong, but I'm tired, and I get tired of fighting, and I get tired of explaining myself. And I have to remind myself, you know, not everyone, you don't owe anyone an explanation. One thing I'm practicing more is my boundaries and being careful of what I take on from my friends and like their issues. If I take on too much, it can really drain me as well. And some days, I know it sounds bad, but I'll have to send them a helpline. I'm like, I just don't have the mental capacity for it today. And of course, if it's urgent, I'll drop everything and be there. But same with me though, like if I'm going through a rough patch, For example, me and Lara, we lost a loved one last year and we were heartbroken. We still are. But I, at the time, I'd rotate calling my friends. So I'd call Jaded on the Monday, Gemma on the Tuesday, Callie on the Wednesday, because I've got to respect that they have a life too and they got to look after their own well-being. One thing that annoys me is the whole judgment with your progress and how long it's taking. When people are physically injured, say for example, if you're in a ski accident or a car accident and you've got to take months off work, no one bats an eyelid. But when it comes to mental health, I feel like it's so rushed. And that whole attitude, that whole attitude of, are you better yet? You know, baby steps are real. And I feel like if you're too rushed, that's when you can easily relapse back into depression. Like, my brain is like a Rubik's Cube, and I've had to adapt to how my brain works now. And I look at it like my new normal. Things that never used to bother me, I really struggle with now. For example, like when I went to a festival, if it was a couple of years ago with Lara, and the whole week we were going back and forth whether or not I should go, because will it be too crowded? What if someone touches me and it triggers me and this, that and the other? But I've learned to adapt as well as I can when I'm in that situation, and I prep for it as much as I can, even put like a simple exit strategy in place, even just by saying to Lara, like, you know what, I'm not feeling great, I'm gonna go, please can you walk me out, I try those things rather than cancelling. I struggle a lot with concentration as well. I can get like sensory overload where I can hear the TV, I can hear the wind blowing outside, I can hear someone's phone, but I'll say if I'm over at Jada's house, sometimes I have to ask, I'm like, oh, please can you turn off the TV? Some days I'm able to firm it, and some days I'm not. What helps me when I have to be somewhere and I'm feeling down, I'll just watch funny videos that can help uplift me, something like Friends or Mo the Comedian, or even a little TikTok video just to uplift my mood. That really helps as well.
No, girls, tonight was a good night.
Tonight was a good night, you know.
Did you enjoy yourself? Yeah?
Not tonight. Where's your eyebrows?
Where's my eyebrows? They in my makeup bag while I left them.
Slay.
Don't worry about my eyebrows. Why you ain't got a man?
No, I'm just
I
asking.
could look confused, surprised. Don't worry about.
Music helps. I remember I was on my way to a job interview and I was really down, so I was listening to drum and bass, and that really helped to perk me up. When I go shopping in Asda and I'm feeling overwhelmed by everything, and if there's a lot of people, I'll just put on my yoga playlist. I like to make mental notes of my progress as well. For example, last year I was walking to the train station and this man tapped me on my arm, and it really took me aback. And at the time I was like, you know, there's no need to touch me. He goes, oh, I've been calling you, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, I didn't panic straight away. I was like, let me think rationally. And I thought, it's daylight, you're on a busy main road, it's a really open space. If anything happens, I'm sure someone's going to see it. And I was wearing my nan's wedding ring, and I thought, if he's trying to chat you out, you know, just say that you're married. And I did, and it was fine. Whereas before, if that happened, I would have freaked out, panicked, crossed the road and ran away. So little things like that I make notes of to see, you know, I am making progress. There was a YouTube series that I watched last year where Lele Pons talks about her OCD and how she accepts that it never truly goes away. She says, sometimes I hate what I have inside. It can be so dark. I just want peace.
Am I scared of what they might say? Yes, but am I embarrassed? No. My name is Lily Pons, and I suffer from OCD, Tourette's, ADHD, and depression.
People think that I have the perfect life. You know, sometimes because of like social media, you show that you do. But no, I don't have a perfect life. I just have to do it one more time.
Don't do it. You can. We're gonna do it together.
One more time.
I know, no. You're gonna do it. Hang in there. It's gonna go away.
My deepest, darkest secret is that I have OCD.
Very powerful thoughts that make me do stuff that I don't want to do. It got to a point that I could not move.
It's a struggle that is 24 hours a day. She's incapable of taking care of herself at times, but then she's capable of taking care of complex things in ways that takes no effort.
It's really interesting that a person can be completely dysfunctional, and yet they can be incredibly productive artistically.
You can't really create cultural impact without being a little bit off-center. That space off-center is where you find the good ones.
I believe time is a good healer. Similar to her outlook, I feel like my post-traumatic stress isn't something that can be cured. But in time, I'll slowly get back to a normal day-to-day life and energy levels again. But I feel like I'm always going to have that risk of being triggered. So I'm very aware of that, and I try and prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Another quote I love: "The real glow up is when you stop waiting to turn into some perfect version of yourself and consciously enjoy being who you are in the present." I've got to be wary of being too positive as well. I remember, all that visualizing, manifesting, law of attraction, ask, believe, receive. Like, I used to believe in all of that. Now I take it with a pinch of salt, because there's so many things that I have visualized. When people talk about vision boards, I had 3 vision books, and what I've learned is life doesn't always go to plan. And some of the things that didn't, work out was actually a blessing in disguise. Like I said earlier, what is meant for you won't pass you by. And things can change in an instant. I've made decisions and changes to my life that I never thought I would. But I've learned that is life. Like, there are bumps in the road that are out of your control, and I've just got to adapt and roll with it as best I can. I read in Dr. Jessica Taylor's blog, that saying, everything happens for a reason. It's like a magical thinking that we use to give meaning to experiences we try to make sense of. Even the whole outlook of we can't change what happens, but we can change how we feel. It's not realistic. Like, some days I'm really good. I can meditate and I go for a long walk and I feel like I can have a productive day. And then some days I physically and mentally cannot get out of bed. Like, I feel wiped out. My whole body feels heavy and fatigued. And I don't choose that feeling. I hate them wobbly days. And people come with their advice saying, you deal with it better if you just thought positively. It's like shaming someone, and it can really make people feel less than. There's a huge difference between toxic positivity and genuine optimism. One thing that I really don't like about the law of attraction as well is, like, when they say even your hardships, like, deep down you attracted it. And it's like, and all that, like, thoughts become things. And it's like, I can fucking assure you, I didn't ever think about or attract my acts of violence or my PTSD. Or even, like, losing a loved one and going through grief. Don't talk to me about think positive and thoughts become things. Now, before I move on to suicidal thoughts, I want to leave you with a couple quotes. Telling someone they can't be sad because others have it worse is like saying someone can't be happy because others have it better. And talking about mental health is not attention seeking. People die in silence every day due to this judgment. And then people finally say, I wish they spoke up. We live in a society that stigmatizes mental health but mourns suicide. So I started suffering with suicidal thoughts a couple years ago. It's a symptom of my post-traumatic stress, and it's a scary one as well. I remember at the beginning of this year, I was texting a friend and she said, we were talking about goals this year, and she asked me what mine were. And the first thing that came into my head was staying alive. Like, nothing else even entered my head. Something that contributes a lot to my suicidal thoughts is victim blaming. I'm going to talk more about this in my next vlog. But victim blaming, example, after experiencing my acts of violence, people reacting with questions like, what was you wearing? Were you drinking? You need to go do self-defense classes and learn to fight back, etc. And my mind goes to, like, so what? If you're telling me that this is all my fault, if that's the case, I don't want to be here anymore. When people are saying, like, you need to get better, you need to do more therapy. And I think, I'm sure it comes from a place of care and concern, But if I'm in that dark place, I think, gosh, am I not good enough as I am? And what if I don't get better? Like, will you not accept me as I am like this? And, being compared, like, he's been through worse and he's able to work now. Why don't you try what he's doing? I watched this BBC documentary about frontline soldiers called PTSD, The War in My Head. And even though we've had completely different experiences, I really resonated with their symptoms and how they were feeling.
When people talk about PTSD in particular, they talk about, walking the black dog. And I just think that is a really lame way of putting it. It's more like being chained to a dark wolf that is trying to eat you constantly. And you have to fight it every day, every minute, every hour. And sometimes you get a lucky punch and that wolf goes down for a few hours, maybe a day, maybe 2 days. But eventually that wolf comes round and the wolf is always there. You're chained to it, so you can't get away from it.
Vanessa Bryant wrote this caption: "Find your reason to live. I know it's hard. I look at my daughters and I try to push through that feeling for them. Death is guaranteed, but living the rest of the day isn't. Find your reason." Finding my reason and having purpose really helps to keep my suicidal thoughts at bay. I try my best to change my language towards myself as well. Instead of coping with mental health, I like to say thriving with mental health. I feel like it's more empowering. Or instead of saying a bad day, I'd say like, I've had an off day or a few wobbly days instead. More recently, I've completed training to work in an organisation that is female-only, survivor-led, and it helps supports other women and girls who've been affected by gender-based violence. Now, this job means the world to me and is so close to my heart, but I wouldn't be able to do it if I hadn't been through my hardships. So I'm focusing more on my strengths and my resilience, and I'm trying my best to bring something meaningful from my negative experiences. I used to look back at my past and think, you shouldn't have gone there, you should have stayed at home. And I can't think like that. It ends up driving myself crazy with the what ifs. So I remind myself, just because things could have been different doesn't mean that they would have been better. Another quote I like is, "Don't make a decision today. You don't need to act on your thoughts right now. You might find that you are more able to cope in a few days." Now, I know exactly how I would take my life. I've planned it for over 2 years. And the thing is, when I'm at my worst, it's usually when I can't get out of bed, and that does me a favour because I don't have the energy to get up and act on any of those thoughts and hit that fuck it button, And I think I'm too tired today, I'll do it tomorrow. But within that time, I try and have a word with myself and say, Rochelle, firm it, ride it out. I tell myself, this is just a symptom of your post-traumatic stress. You've been here before. You know it doesn't last forever. And also within that time, I try and talk to friends, a therapist, even my GP, even a helpline. Even distracting myself for a couple of days. I remember last year I would watch Gogglebox from Series 7, and it was such a good distraction, and I swear Gogglebox fucking saved me last year. Staying away from alcohol, like as much as I'm drinking again, if I'm in a bad way, I choose not to, because alcohol and drugs can affect the parts of your brain that control judgment, behaviour and emotions, and that's when you're more likely to act on those thoughts. Another quote I want to share is, "Suicide is a long-term solution to a short-term problem. Don't make a permanent decision on a temporary feeling. Suicide doesn't take the pain away, it passes it to someone else." And I watched the Caroline Flack documentary on Channel 4 recently, and seeing the pain of her friends and family, it just reminds me, that's what will happen to mine. But But when I'm feeling shit, I forget all that. And it's hard because you're in a dark place, you're sleep deprived. And I look at my loved ones and I genuinely think you lot would be better off without me. I'm in that headspace where I feel like a burden. And I think with me gone, that's one less thing for you lot to worry about. So when people judge suicide and think that it's selfish, like, you have no idea what is going on in that person's head. To me, it's like I'm doing my loved ones a favour. It doesn't stem from being selfish. And there's been many days where I can be functioning with these thoughts. One time I was visiting someone in hospital and the woman opposite, in the bed opposite, she didn't have long left. And I was looking at her thinking, oh God, what I would do to be in your shoes. And then after I went up and went to work, like, you wouldn't have ever guessed that I was even having those thoughts. And it's a really horrible headspace to be in. I read something similar to this last year. One day I will die no matter what. I won't live forever. And it makes me think I might as well plod along in between now and then. And as much as I physically like to be left alone, sometimes it's good when my friends check in, because it reminds me, do you know what, they will actually miss me if I'm not here anymore. So a message or a voice note, it can go a really long way. And I don't mean my whole phone book. I mean my friends who I've opened up to during like a time where I'm going through a rough patch. One time I remember I called my doctors and they done like a the doctors called me, they done like a mental health check-in, done a questionnaire, and I said, oh, do you know what, my suicidal thoughts, they've reduced a lot now, I'm hardly getting them, and I'm enjoying my new colouring book. And they were like, oh, what else are you doing with your time? And it just makes me think, God, society can be so rushed. And, you know, asking me, what else am I doing? And then I'm like, well, not much, come to think of it. And it's like, thanks for the reminder. And things like that can cause me to backtrack. And I know it's unintentional, but people need to be wary of their questions and attitudes. The London night out with my friends that I was talking about earlier, the one that I postponed, my friend Gemma, she come met me and she gave me flowers, bless her. And she said that she was upset that I didn't think that I had any purpose. And she was like, you do, you have me. And that meant the world to me, bless her. And seeing those flowers in my room was a reminder for me to keep going and keep going. Them two words are so important to me. I even got a tattoo of it last year because that's how much I wanted to remind myself. It's in Filipino, but it basically says, this too shall pass, keep going. I want to finish with a couple other quotes that I love, and hopefully it will resonate with anyone struggling. No matter how bad things are right now, no matter how hopeless you feel, you won't feel this way forever. Setbacks aren't forever. Look how far you've come. Pause, breathe, cry if you must, but please keep going. And every situation in life is temporary. So when life is good, make sure you enjoy it and receive it fully. And when life is not so good, remember that it will not last forever and better days are on the way.